Welcome to the 359. I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
I'm Roger Chang.
CNET has tested 5G networks all over the globe, spanning 7 different networks in 11 different cities from Los Angeles to Seoul. If you want to read more about what we did, check out Jessica Dolcourt's story where she wrote, 5G age is no longer approaching, it has dawned. Okay, so 5G has dawned, Roger.
Yes.
What do we find out? What do we know about 5G now?
It's a rough start. There are definitely some growing pains with 5G. It is here, and in some cases, it is remarkably fast. In other cases, it's non-existent. And it's generally true. We did see a kind of a wide disparity in terms of the sheer speeds we were getting across the different cities and different carriers, and we'll kind of explain why. But I think the bottom line ultimately was that really, regardless of the carrier, regardless of the city, the coverage was generally still kind of shaky.
Right.
I would say maybe the exception were some parts of Australia and some parts of Korea.
One of the obvious benefits, one of the obvious positives here that I noticed from this test is that even the slower speeds, which are between 400 and 500 megabits per second, are still, I think Jessica mentions this in the story, it's still 2 to 4 times faster than your current 4G network.
Well, no, I mean, I think that was, so when she said 2 to 4 times, that was basically based off of a test of the earliest Verizon 5G network, which was actually slower than what they had actually gone. For 400 megs, you're looking at really more like 10 times faster than an LTE connection, right? Because you're getting, optimistically, you're getting 40, 50 megs per second, megabits per second on an LTE network. Oftentimes, you might be getting a slower connection, 10, 15. I mean, it's so when you're looking at 400 as a minimum, that's pretty impressive. And then, take it to the extreme, we went to AT&T's Warner Brothers studio. AT&T's network is not available for consumers, but they did have sort of this closed-off network for its employees at Warner Brothers. It was getting 1.8 gigs.
Which is crazy.
That's insane.
Okay, so 400 is already really impressive.
Oh, yeah.
We're seeing several multiples higher than that.
And 1.8 gigs, keep in mind, for a frame of reference, Google Fiber is 1 gig per second of speed.
Right, and that's a wired
That is
connection.
your fastest landline connection possible right now, and they're smoking it right now.
Okay, let's talk about the negatives then, because I'm feeling this hype train getting a little going. So what's bad about this?
So as we saw with Verizon and AT&T in particular, they had super fast speeds, but the range is really short. Like you go to another block, and all of a sudden the coverage is gone. You're back to 4G. We saw with Sprint, in London, in Korea, the coverage was a little bit wider, and that's why the speeds were lower, right? So there's kind of a trade-off between speed and coverage. But even with those other networks around the world, there were still some outages. Like there were still black spots or dead spots here where you just couldn't get coverage. So again, it's all about this is early days, and the transition to 5G is definitely going to take a little while.
Yeah. Next up, I got a chance to interview 4 Amazon execs from across the company's businesses to see how the e-commerce giant uses AI, automation, and robotics to create new concepts like its Amazon Go cashierless store. This work is happening, by the way, at a time when there is significant concern that AI and automation will wipe away millions of jobs. Roger, what do you make of that balance between, hey, check out all this shiny new stuff versus... Right. Everybody that's a trucker is going to lose their job.
Yeah, I think that is a legitimate concern. I know, like you've talked to Amazon, they kind of dismissed it a bit or said that new jobs will get created. But I think anytime you get a big innovation in how things are made or how services are delivered, there's a lot of fear about how that displaces jobs. It's gone on basically since the beginning of time, right?
Yeah.
But I think the rate of innovation that's going on right now is unprecedented, and I think that has a lot of people freaked out.
Yeah, and they definitely spoke a lot about that as it related to Amazon Go stores, because those are stores that don't have cashiers in them,
right.
And they're getting a lot of flack for them. And from my conversations with them, they were like, look, we do not see a situation where we're not going to have any humans in the stores. I mean, like, people still need to stock the shelves. They still need to answer customers' questions. Right. So I don't think we're going to end up in a situation where you're just not going to have people in those stores, which is... And so
you got a lot of this information from the Amazon Remars conference, or their techie conference. What was sort of the most interesting or the weirdest thing you learned from your talks with those executives?
So one of the coolest things was the warehouse robots. So they're developing these warehouse robots that basically have computer vision. They have eyeballs. where they're going to be able to get out of these cages. Right now, the robots are stuck in cages. They're going to be getting out of the cages and be able to roam around the factories, roam around the warehouses a lot more than they used to.
Are they like little R2D2s rolling around?
They're like orange Roombas, and they'll be able to do more stuff and actually interact more directly with people. So it is kind of like having R2D2 or C3PO, or a very early version of that, hanging out with you, filling out orders. So yeah, I thought it was kind of cool.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyway, if you want to read more about these stories, check them out on CNET. I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
I'm Roger Chang.
Thanks for listening. Entirely worth it. That's one of the newer robots. That's one of the newer warehouse robots.
I had an image in my mind.
I think they'll probably
Droids.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us for the recording of the audio podcast. See, everything stays pretty much the same. The more things change, the more they stay the same. We are so thrilled that you came along for the journey and are joining us over here on the new channel, where we're going to continue to do our best to deliver the best and most important tech news headlines, where we can converse with you folks out there in YouTube and Periscope and whatever else land we end up streaming on. Who knows what the CNET will decide for us down the line. But yeah, it's still the same old show. We want to remind you that there will be some new stuff happening. We're looking at taking some more segments. We're going to actually poll you folks soon about what you want to see out of us. If you have any input about ideas for the show, feel free to throw them at us. At this point, CNET's kind of given us the reins to just run with the show, hence the new channel, so we can do whatever the hell we want without them saying anything. So in the meantime, we still love doing the Q&A, and that will never go anywhere. So let's go ahead and delve into the chat and take some questions and comments. First off, let's give a shout out to some of the loyalists who have joined us over here on the new channel: Commander Trium, Yan Hao Chen, Timothy Du, Eric Ryder, Imagine Sagi. It's so good to see all you folks. We hope to keep seeing you here every single weekday morning, except this coming Thursday, because, you know, America.
And Friday. Don't forget Friday.
Oh, yeah, we're off.
We don't work.
We're off,
Yeah,
but
we
never
don't do
vote.
this on Friday.
First question out the gate. Let's take one from our buddy Timothy. Do you see more IoT, Internet of Things, generating more video traffic in this 5G market? That's a great question.
That's an interesting one. More IoT generating video traffic? We're talking like connected billboards or more connected TVs?
Or surveillance cameras.
Surveillance cameras.
Facebook portals?
Portals, smart displays.
I guess so.
It's a little bit tough because inside right now, you're still going to be relying upon your Wi-Fi network. I think the ideal situation is a 5G connection but beams into your home, into the Wi-Fi hub, into your modem, and then that'll broadcast a Wi-Fi signal. So you don't have to buy a bunch of 5G devices. All your Wi-Fi stuff should work just fine with the network. I would say outside for more industrial or commercial uses like billboards and smart displays that are outside, installations at hotels or in retail shops, I could definitely see more 5G applications there. And really, 5G was designed to be a network for IoT devices first. It wasn't, the benefit of having a faster phone connection was always kind of the side benefit. They really envisioned this kind of connecting everything from street lamps to farm monitoring equipment. So IoT and connected devices was really kind of the big priority. So I definitely see a lot of opportunity there.
Before we move on, one more shout out to Life Improvements. We haven't seen you in a while, sir. It's good to have you back. Hello. And happy Canada Day to all of our Canadian fans out there.
Hey!
My heart breaks today because we do not get a new season of Letterkenny because it is no longer a Crave TV exclusive. It is now on Hulu, and we'll get it in October. And that's a very, very niche reference that only a few of you may get. So
I didn't get it.
Not me neither.
It's the best show happening on television not television right now. So go look it up.
Schitt's Creek, but okay, I'll allow it.
It's right up in the same vein. So if you're a fan of Schitt's Creek, you'll probably like Letterkenny. All right, next question. In regards to 5G, Yan is asking, technically, do you think this means you can actually successfully play Stadia on 4K?
Yes, if you can get a stable connection. Again, if you're at home, with maybe a 5G home broadband connection, I wouldn't see any problems with that. The bandwidth should be more than enough to get like the full Stadia experience. I think when you're out and about, it really will depend. If you've got, if you're near one of those AT&T or Verizon towers, like really close to one, you should be fine. Generally, though, like the lower bands, and this is really the difference. We didn't have time to get into. The difference here is AT&T and Verizon using what's known as millimeter wave spectrum. That's at super high frequency, like 28, 40 gigahertz. That really gives you a fat pipe. That's why you're getting like 1.8 gigabits per second of speeds on the Verizon AT&T network, as opposed to more like 400 or 500 megabits per second with Sprint, with the UK carriers, and with Australia and Korea. It's because they're using lower, it's what's known as sub-6 or sub-6 gigahertz spectrum. Still fast compared to what we kind of use now, but more of a kind of in that middle ground between that extreme high speeds and sort of the lower frequency spectrum we use for 4G and 3G. And that's why you got better coverage there. So in terms of going back to Stadia, I would say if if you're on one of those networks and you have a fairly decent connection or a fairly reliable connection, then that you should be able to get the full Stadia experience. That should be more than enough bandwidth.
When do you expect to see home service?
So we see there is a version of home service now Verizon offers to two or three cities. It's fairly limited. I think LA, Sacramento, and maybe there's a couple others, but I forget which ones. They're really looking to wait till they get to kind of a standards-based version of 5G before they roll it out to more people. But Verizon's talked about it. T-Mobile's talked about it. I wouldn't be surprised if AT&T starts doing it as well, because it's a new business for them, right? Getting folks connected to a home broadband service.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity in theory that, home broadband customers could get more competition finally.
And Verizon and AT&T already offer home broadband in their territories, but 5G gives them a chance to do it elsewhere, to go outside of their traditional footprint.
And I'm thinking T-Mobile and Sprint additionally jumping into it. That's in the U.S. markets. I can't really speak to some of those other markets we cover, like the U.K. I don't know if it's as much of like a cable monopoly out there.
I think it's hard to say, because I to be perfectly frank, haven't followed their like comments on the interest in home broadband. I know the priority has been mobile, and really in the U.S. is where we've talked a lot about home broadband service. So
cool.
Next question is coming in from Timothy again. When will MVNO take advantage of 5G? I hope they piggyback on day one deployment.
That is a really good question. MVNOs, mobile virtual network operators, basically they're resellers.
I'm glad you knew that.
Yeah, they're like resellers, like TracFone. They basically lease time off of these networks and sell you service for a cheaper price. There's a ton of them. A bunch of them actually offer really good deals. They're usually budget providers. So I remember when 4G came out, it took a little while for those MVNOs to pop into and start using the 5G network. I imagine it'll be the same. Really, you're looking at these carriers working to make these networks a bit more stable, the coverage a little bit better, before they'll actually lease time off. Before an MVNO would even be interested, frankly. Like, I don't know if the service is going to be that eager to like hop on the Verizon network if they know the coverage is still kind of spotty, if it's mostly just hotspots. We should see a lot better coverage in the second half. T-Mobile, Sprint are really looking to roll out 5G in lower bands. In particular, T-Mobile is targeting the 600 megahertz band, which is really, really lower frequency. That's basically what you use for LTE, but it's supposed to promise much wider coverage. Won't be as fast as the crazy high speeds we're seeing now, but the coverage will be a lot more comprehensive.
And it sounds like that's kind of the balancing act that they're doing, that they're providing various levels of 5G almost.
Yeah, they kind of call it like a layer cake analogy, where they've got like the hotspot at the top, and then they've got that sub-6 middle band, and then at the bottom they have this sort of wide coverage band that kind of keeps you on the 5G network. And when you get into like densely populated areas like New York, then you'll have a better chance of hitting some of the higher bandwidth connections.
Right.
Yep.
Shout out to Datcher, James Cook, NY Fly, and Storm King for joining us over here on the brand new channel. Let's take a question from Jay from Jersey 147. Hey, he says, longtime fan of the show, first time commenting. Great to have you.
Hello.
When do you think we can get smart traffic lights? Can 5G help with this? I think it needs to be a priority. And you know what? I'm with Jay on this one.
Yeah, I agree too. We've talked a lot about, or I've heard a lot about smart city infrastructure being powered by 5G. Again, it goes back to that the ability to actually cast a wide enough coverage net, and right now we're not there yet. We're kind of like in hotspots, and so I think there's definitely opportunity for smart city infrastructure both under 4G and 5G. And I know they've talked about it in different, like Verizon and Boston have talked a lot about it. I think Atlanta has talked about it, and so there are a lot of folks looking at the opportunities for smart lights, not just street lights, but really all city infrastructure. But in terms of traffic management, definitely looking at smart lights to optimize how traffic flows.
Yeah, hopefully they're awareness on privacy issues is, top of mind for something like that. So there are ways of doing traffic lights, I would hope,
Yep.
that don't just turn into like a data grab or something that
Yeah.
makes privacy-minded folks a lot more uncomfortable.
I mean, definitely. And there's a bigger opportunity once you start connecting cars to 5G as well, because you've got cars talking directly to those street lights.
Be like, hey, here I come.
Hey, we've got 15 cars coming to this one intersection. There are no cars in the opposite way. Maybe we run this light green for a little bit longer, right?
Yeah.
So,
It makes a ton of sense, and obviously, you reduce carbon emissions.
Yep.
That you don't have as many vehicles that are kind of waiting around that are just idling. But yeah, hopefully they at least consider the privacy concerns, which I know are everybody's talking about a lot more in the tech world.
No, definitely.
Lots of great questions and comments still filtering in. This is something we've touched on before, but it's never a bad time to revisit this because it's always going to be kind of a baking concern in the back of people's heads. But NYFly is asking if 5G is ionizing. Curious to see on some of the studies that have been floating around about how low frequencies can penetrate and mess with internals, specifically citing a study on rats he recently came across. So let's go ahead and delve down this rabbit hole again.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit. This is sort of 5G is technically or officially categorized under a category of ionization that is supposed to be not lethal or doesn't have the potential to alter or damage your DNA. But that said, pretty much every expert has said that we just don't have enough 5G test results out there to make a conclusive or make a conclusion as to whether or not 5G is healthy. So that's always going to be out there. It ranges from legitimate concerns to crackpot theories that 5G is going to kill us all. There's sort of a wide range. There's probably some truth to it, but at this point we just don't know.
Yeah, Maggie Reardon, our colleague, came out with a really comprehensive story that talks about this that you'd be able to find. I think it came out mid-month last month, and that's the thing with a lot of science is that science is rarely conclusive. So to say that it's inconclusive basically means we still need to study it, but at this point, I don't think that they're saying the sky is falling. We absolutely need to stop doing this because it's going to cause health problems.
Look, the World Health Organization lists it as a potential carcinogen, but it also lists coffee
and pickled vegetables. I was just looking that up because I thought it was a really interesting reference that possibly carcinogenic sounds really scary on its face, but I don't think that's stopping anybody from drinking coffee that already drinks coffee. Right. So, definitely do as much as you can to educate yourself on this. And at this point, I don't think anybody in the health world is saying we need to stop rolling this out immediately,
right?
Due to health concerns. But yeah, anyway, great question.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I'm screwed considering I had a jar of pickled peppers for breakfast. All right. Let's slam through a few more questions before we run out of time. Eric asks, are there even 5G phones available yet? If there are no, I would not buy any.
We don't... What? That's a terrible question to ask CNET. How would CNET know the answer to that? Take it away, Roger.
No, it's a great question. There are a number of phones out there. Really, for the U.S., it's really just two phones: the Galaxy S10 5G, which at this point is available on all four carriers. You can't move them from carrier to carrier. I think there are specific bands that are being used, but there are versions of the Samsung Galaxy S10 that tap into each one of the networks. Sprint also has it's the LG V50 ThinQ, I believe. That is that's their first 5G phone. I believe there's a hotspot coming for them as well. Outside of the U.S., the OnePlus 7 Pro can tap into the the EE network in the UK.
Man, you are crushing
and
it.
there are a number of Oppo phones that are coming out that also have 5G. So there are
Oppo
actually
Reno 5G.
yes.
Yeah.
So there are a number of 5G phones that are out in the market. The very there's just a few models out there. They tend to be a little bit bigger. They tend to be a little bit more expensive. Oh, the Moto Mod, Motorola's Moto Z4 can become a 5G phone with a Moto Mod 5G attachment,
Which you can
Of
buy in the
course it
United
can.
States.
which you could buy. It's a Verizon exclusive. Yeah. So there are a number of devices. Shar Tipkin had a story out this weekend, basically saying, despite all these devices that are out there, you should probably hold off on buying one. It's really the first generation of these phones are really kind of built towards a specific carrier. You'll start to see phones with modems that have sort of multi-band compatibility coming in the second half and early 2020. That's really when you want to start looking at 5G devices.
Right. And the coverage, as we've been saying throughout this episode, is very limited. So, if you have any interest in jumping on the 5G bandwagon, you are very much an early adopter at this point.
Yep.
So as a follow-up to that, Storm King is asking, is it even worth buying a 5G phone if the network is unstable?
No.
Not right now.
No, not right. Yeah.
Not right now, but
I'd hold off.
eventually.
Yeah, like I said, the second half, going into early next year, you'll start to see the networks mature a little bit, and the devices will be a lot better, a lot potentially more compatible with more networks, as opposed to like one network right now. You'd probably be locked into one carrier, unless like you really love that carrier. It's probably not the best bet. And
Sure,
then
I love my carrier.
some people do. I don't know. I don't, but I'm very agnostic about that. Sort
Sure.
of thing.
No, that's a good
Yeah.
point. If you're going to shell out the kind of money that you usually would for a new smartphone these days, that's obviously a consideration.
You'd want the option to jump onto another network if that one offers a better 5G service, right?
Yeah.
Great contribution here from Life Improvement. Says, just looked up something. Apparently light on the red end of the spectrum is on the non-ionizing radiation, and from the blue end, it's on the ionizing radiation spectrum. So that is good information to know. Thank you. You're hired.
Yeah.
Yes. Well done.
There you go.
So in the 11th hour here, as we're winding down, a couple more questions. James asks, is T-Mobile, sandbagging 5G due to the pending merger?
I don't think so. We just ran our speed tests in New York on Friday. They were fairly impressive. They kind of on the same line of what Sprint's speed results were like, and that's partly because they have a little bit less available spectrum here in New York. So technically, they're also using millimeter wave spectrum. So you would assume that their speeds would be somewhere more comparable to what Verizon and AT&T have shown, which is above the 1 gigabit level. T-Mobile says, again, limited spectrum. In other cities where they're launching 5G now, you should expect speeds that are above the 1 gigabit per second mark. And so I don't think they are. I mean,
Sandbagging?
Sandbagging is a fairly loaded term. I mean, I think they are being fairly quiet about the 5G network now. They're really looking to the second half when they start deploying 5G on their 600 megahertz spectrum. That's when the coverage is a lot better. That's when devices that are built for that particular band of spectrum are going to be available, and I think that's when you'll see them be a lot louder. They are going to make a big deal of it, no doubt about it, but I think they're waiting for the second half, and I think that's less relevant to what happens with Sprint. But we'll see. That definitely the looming merger between T-Mobile and Sprint, whether that actually happens, is going to be a big X factor in how the 5G strategy plays out in the rest of the year.
We got time for two more. First one's coming from Timothy again. Speaking of jobs for truckers, we're swinging over to the Amazon story now. Does this mean we won't see anyone selling products that magically fell off the truck anymore?
Oh, interesting.
Probably. No, you would probably still see that kind of stuff.
Yeah?
You could always trust in the ingenuity of criminals.
That's true.
Like
A little bit of
regardless.
hacking.
Yeah.
What about criminal robots on the side of the street?
Sure. I mean, if these trucks are being piloted by AI, you could theoretically hack it and reroute it, I guess.
You could do that and then steal the whole truck for sure.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Or there's no like
this truck fell off another truck.
There's no burly trucker to hit you with a wrench. So yeah, you just jump in and take it wherever you want to. So but with that stuff, it's all a cat and mouse game. So
right.
You get one step in one direction to close the door for criminal activity or any sort of thing. I'm sure they figure out a different way of doing stuff. So I don't anticipate that AI and automation will completely get rid of any of that kind of stuff or safety issues either.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
for instance, with the warehouse robots, the executive I talked to about that said, like, we can ensure safety because the warehouse robots, once like they've been updated, they don't do like things that like a person might accidentally do. Like, I don't know, like drop something from the ceiling or whatever.
Right.
So, but I would say don't jump to conclusions with that too much because it's just like the robot will go on the fritz sometimes too, just like a person might.
There you go.
You know, it makes me wonder too if that means that robots don't celebrate holidays. Is there robot holidays yet? So
There
do they
will
get to
be.
take a day
I'm
off?
sure there will be. Yeah.
There will be. For like the first
When they
like,
achieve consciousness or
for
something.
the first telephone, I feel like they'll do like a for like, you know, like Graham Bell Day or something. I don't know. Like what would they celebrate? What's their version?
Judgment Day,
I don't know, the birth of the.
Did you just say Judgment Day?
maybe.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking actually. If there's a day for the robots to celebrate, it's
After the humans have been
they
enslaved.
they overthrow their human overlords and
Right.
become the new masters.
And the robot kids complain about having to go to the stupid Judgment Day parade because like it's no longer a battle. It's
Right,
just kind of oh, this is so boring.
Oh, Dad, couldn't they update the T-800s? They march so slow.
Those T-800s gave you your freedom, son.
Oh, God. Okay. You know, on that note, too, I smell a brand new genre of movie, like cyber heist. I would love to see, like, a heist movie or, like, a...
Oh, yeah.
Like a Western, a train robbery movie, but it's like an automated truck.
Oh my God!
Oh,
Can we get Mark
yeah.
Wahlberg? We need Mark Wahlberg for this.
Or
I
Vin
think we
Diesel.
got a
Or Vin Diesel.
transformer.
Vin Diesel would be better, honestly.
All of the above. That's the next Fast and the Furious. The entire cast has been fired. It's all just autonomous cars. With better acting than Jason Statham, anyways. So, before we're done, one quick off-topic question from Yan Hao Chen, and this is a good one that we would probably have gotten to sooner or later if we didn't completely bogart today with 5G. Is it possible to update on the current state of the Huawei ban? Does it mean Huawei will continue to offer Android on their phones?
Yes, I believe there's been a loosening of some of the restrictions, but from what I understand, the Google mobile services like Android, that's still, I'm not entirely sure if that is part of the reprieve.
I don't know.
I know, like in terms of chips, like semiconductors, that's yes, they'll be able to buy certain components from the U.S., particularly stuff that's non-competitive. But I think Android is in one of those situations where it's a sort of exclusive intellectual property to the U.S. There's no other company around the world that makes that, so it's still a little unclear to me whether or not that's
Still very fluid.
yeah, it's totally a fluid situation. This is what happens when Huawei has basically been tangled up into these broader trade talks between China and the U.S. So, yeah. It's a good question, though. It's kind of unclear what's going on right now.
It could change tomorrow,
Yeah.
But at this point, they are not in as dire a situation as they were 24 hours ago or 48 hours ago when the ban was much stricter.
Absolute. Yeah.
Yeah, and like they were literally in danger. What is it? The second biggest phone maker in the world?
Mm-hmm.
They were in danger
And
of
the
going belly up.
the world's largest telecommunications maker.
Right. And worth mentioning, they do a ton of 5G networking.
Oh, yeah.
They do a lot of that infrastructure, which you're probably still not going to see in the United States, even after a trade
And there
deal.
is, by the way, there is. I was talking to Maggie Reardon, who kind of schooled me on this. The big company, the big four, don't have Huawei equipment, but there are a number of rural carriers and telecommunications companies in the U.S. that do use Huawei equipment. And right now, there's a whole debate about whether or not that stuff has to get ripped out and replaced.
Which are areas that like really probably can't afford to do that.
Exactly. There's a whole issue, a question about cost, about whether or not we could afford to do that, if we could afford to have folks be offline around the country for, who knows how long. So, it's definitely an issue that, I mean, it seems like it's kind of an amorphous thing that's this bigger trade battle, but there are real world consequences for what might happen if Huawei gets shut down.
As we've pretty much alluded to for the last however long, 6-10 months that we've been covering this, eternally ongoing, forever evolving, and we'll continue to cover it to the best of our ability. But thank you for the question.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great question.
On that note, we're out of time. Before we do wrap it up, thanks again, everybody, for coming and joining us on the new channel and this new venture. We want to see this show continue to grow, like we mentioned before. It's all thanks to you folks. This started off as like a rando 4-minute audio podcast that we got the freedom to run with and do like a behind-the-curtain thing on Facebook Live. They moved us over here to YouTube, then gave us our own channel. So at this point, there's no strings attached. So we can run and come up with any creative new ideas we want to. We want you to sound off. Let us know what you want to see. As the month progresses, we're going to evolve and change. Eventually, this channel is going to become kind of like the one-stop hub for news-based stories coming out of CNET. Like the CNET proper YouTube channel is still going to do all the great reviews and human interest stories and develop stuff. And we're going to do this live show and break it out into segments and get more audience interaction and input, maybe even start taking phone calls, that kind of stuff. But we want to hear from you. As always, this entire show is built on your backbone and your input. So once again, thank you for everything. Before we do go, I want to hear more people sound off on what you think an appropriate robot holiday would be. One good suggestion I see come through was Robodan. I want to see that come to be. Tweet at us, shout at us here in the chat, in the comment section. Tell your friends if you know anybody else who likes long-form, moderately long-form chatterbox shows like this, and is following tech news. We're going to be here at, as always, still every weekday morning at around 11 a.m., 11:15 a.m. On behalf of CNET with Roger and Ben and Alfred and Joan and David Katzmeyer and Bridget and all the others in between. So yeah, really happy to be here. Really happy the show has gone this far. And I'm going to stop rambling now and let Roger go ahead and close the show out.
Ben, you want to do the honors?
I'll do it, yeah, even though I can barely read the text. The 359 is available on iTunes, Stitcher. Are we still on Stitcher? Google Play? All right. I keep doing that. Stitcher, Google Play, Google Podcast, FeedBurner, the Amazon Echo, and of course, CNET.com. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.